Welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Today we'll be doing some drawing with graphite. So get out your pencils, your cotton swab, kneaded eraser, anything that you think you need to draw with. Have it right handy. And let's draw together. Remember, art makes life better. The rule of thumb is that a good composition, your subject matter, comes close to or touches 3 of the 4 sides. So with this, he's kind of central, but I'm going to move him off to this side just a little bit, have his belly almost touching off on the right, and then his head and his horn and everything. I'm going to give him a little bit of breathing space over here. So his head's going to be almost in the middle, and then this body's going to be more off to our right side. We're going to be drawing with the number 2 pencil to begin with. You've probably noticed something about this pencil. See how I've shaved it down? It's because I hate sharpening pencils in the middle of things. And this, my drawing pencil, I've shaved it down so a lot of the graphite is exposed. As you draw, we're going to draw with the side of our pencil. And as I draw, I kind of turn my pencil in my fingers like this. And that sharpens that point. So I never really have to put this in a pencil sharpener. But that's up to you. You do what you want to with it. I do a whole lot of drawing, and so this is what I'm going to do with my 6B pencil. I've got my cotton swab standing by, my kneaded eraser. You just want to clean out your kneaded eraser. This is how you clean it. You pull it apart. It's also very therapeutic. And that cleans your kneaded eraser, and it gets it nice and soft. Kneaded erasers absorb the graphite. They don't rub them out. So let's start out. Simple shapes. What's the first big simple shape you see? Yeah, a circle. And you can say, well, his belly, his head, all the way to his body there is a big circle. So I'm going to say, well, I want it to almost touch this edge over here. So I'm going to make a little mark there, and then I'm going to do a big circle. There is kind of where his body and everything goes. Notice I'm drawing on the side of my pencil. If I draw like this, it's very slow, plus I grind it into the surface. There's 3 reasons why we do this. Number 1 is your lines are going to be better. You get more graphite out on there, and it's superficial. It's on the surface. Everything can be erased. And it's fast, much, much faster. So once you get that, then you start finding other simple shapes. You may want to come down and say, well, there's a leg that comes off of this belly area here. It kind of comes down. There's a leg right here, and there's another one kind of comes off of this one over here. And this is not perfect. I get that. But I've just got to establish the size and where I want it. Number 1, you want it big. Make it as big as you think you can, without it being too ostentatious. Then his head, it's this oval. And it almost, I mean, there's kind of a hump on his back that kind of comes up here. And his head kind of comes up in there. But his ears, if you look at his ears, they're almost level with that top of the circle there. So you can even come in and say, well, there's an ear over here, and there's an ear somewhere over there. And then his head kind of comes down and pokes out a little out here. And so there's a head right there somewhere. And again, we're just establishing where things go. Right now, they might be off, and we have to adjust them. But there's the head in there. There's a little horn that kind of comes off. If you look at the circle that comes around, that horn comes off. Just in front of that circle, there's a horn right there. Or, somewhere about there. Notice I haven't erased yet either. Really, we don't want to start erasing until we're pretty well set with stuff. Once you've got your simple shapes in there, you've got your size, you've got your composition, everything's kind of in the spot that you want it in there. If you wanted to, you could even put some of these bushes in there. There's a bush over here and a bush over here, but nobody cares about the bushes. And in fact, there are some shadows there that you may not want to put in. Like this little shadow back in here by his mouth kind of distracts from the mouth. Maybe I want that to kind of come through. So I'm going to leave that out. And I like these shadows back in there. I could put those in. But all that graphite that we stuck in there, we're going to be blending anyway. So there's no reason to erase anything yet. Then I want to establish some proportions. So for example, the eye. If I go straight across here, if I look at this and I've decided that it's pretty well in the right place, I can adjust it. I can make this a little bit better. But everything is okay. Now I might have to adjust it a little bit, but now I got to figure out where his eyes, his nose, and all that stuff goes. And if you look at the horn, if you go straight across from the horn, and right in between the ears, you come straight down and across there, that's about where the eye goes. But rather than draw the eye in, I'm just going to shade it. I'm just going to put a little dot there with the side of my pencil, because it's dark. And the same thing with the nose. If I come straight down off of here and over just a little bit, somewhere in there is the nose. I can add that. Then I can look at it and go, oh, okay, it needs to go over, it needs to go up or down or whatever. I can change it from there. So at this point, everything is easily erased. So once you establish everything, you got it pretty much where it goes. Start looking at the dark areas, the darkest shadows. So I've got a little one under his chin right there. I'm just going to throw that in. And again, I'm still on the side of my pencil because it's faster this way. And this is easily erased. If any of these shadows, if anything happens here, and I think that's not right, I can change it. Easily change it. A little shadow under the neck there. There's a core shadow there, so there's a shadow under the neck, shadow on the chin right there, the jowls, the jaw, and then there's a little bit of light in between. So I'm just going to do this darker shadow and leave that little bit of light out that's right there. And I'm just looking at the darkest areas, and with the side of my pencil, I'm going to shade those in. Try to think of them as shapes. Like in this ear, if I come straight up from here, there's a shadow that comes right up in his ear, and it's this kind of elongated football shape, almond shape, whatever that is. And then even the tip of his ear has a little bit on there. I can put that in there. So any place that I feel like I want to put shadows to just help define things. The other thing we don't want to do is we don't want to use the tip of our pencil and draw edges. Any place that I feel like there's a little darkness, I can throw that in. And if it's not right, we'll know it. As soon as we're done here, we'll look at it again, we'll analyze it. We'll say, okay, is that right? Does it go there? Now, all these pictures, I do take them off the internet. I do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't get to Africa very often, take pictures of rhinos or other exotic animals. And number two, I want you to be able to access these pictures anytime you want to. So I'm just using the side of my pencil to shade in some little areas. And again, when I'm done, I can look at that and say, okay, that's about right, or no, it's too big or too small, or it's over too far, or whatever. I can change them. Easily changed at this point. It isn't until we start grinding everything into the surface that it's more difficult to change. Also, if you look up there, there's a little triangle of light right there. I'm going to leave that little triangle out. You gotta look at both the positive and the negative. So you look at the shadows and the lights, and the more you understand those, the more you understand what's going on, the easier it will be to draw. And that's just a learned thing. It's a little practice thing. And up to this point, everything is very gray, very light. There's really not a lot of contrast here. And depending on how comfortable you are with adding contrast and darkness. But for right now, we're not going to add a lot. We'll get more confident as the time goes. So these little bushes that are in here, I'm not going to worry too much about them. I could throw in some very, very easy, scribbly kind of shadows. I just think bush, so you kind of do them in like a little fan shape. I'm going to keep that shadow away from his mouth there. I don't like that tangent where the shadow touches that. And again, as artists, we get to choose that. Photographers, they don't get to choose that. Then I'm just going to clean things up with my kneaded eraser. There's some edges that I think need to go. I'm just going to clean up a few things. So now we have our rhinoceros, the size we want it, the place we want it in our picture. And remember, it should come close to touching 3 of the 4 sides. So this is close, and our subject matter down here, it's close enough. Our rhino's kind of square, so. But with the bushes and stuff like that, that'll make it. We'll be okay there. So then what we want to do is, after we've analyzed it, and you say to yourself, okay, is it big enough? Is it, is it in the right place? Then I'm going to take my cotton swab. I'm going to start blending that. This is just going to give me my very light gray tones. And some of this very light gray tone you've got over here. So I could pull some of this out and bring it on over here. And I will do that as I go. I'm just going to take my cotton swab and just do a little bit of blending. So I get asked all the time, how do you make your drawings so smooth? Well, one way is if you go too fast, too dark, then it's going to end up kind of streaky. And so you start out very light, very soft like this, and you blend it. And then you add a little bit more graphite on top of that, and you blend it. So you just kind of layer in your graphite. So all this does is just soften it up, blends it up, there's a grain to your paper, so it takes out the grain of your paper. You also will find that your cotton swab is starting to get graphite in it. And we're going to draw with this. As soon as we get enough graphite on that, you can take it over and you can draw all the weeds, all the stuff in the background. A lot of that can be drawn with it. Even the wrinkles can be drawn with our cotton swab. So I'm just taking all those edges and just blending them out a little bit. And if it's not in the right place, I can always alter this. I can always change it. That horn gets a little fuzzy. So I'm just going to take my, and this is how you get your edges to be nice and tight. Don't want to do a line around things, okay? Please, 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 in the back of your mind, think to yourself, I'm not going to draw a line around anything. If you need to, that's like the last thing you do. Some of you might be like Henri Rousseau. Rousseau never really did much artwork until he was about the age of 40. He had got into a job, and he did his job. He was a toll collector on a bridge, of all things. And then he decided, you know what, I'm done. So he retired from that, thought, okay, now what do I do? So he started drawing and painting, and he became quite famous and quite wealthy off his artwork after the age of 40. So now some of you might be going, you know what? Drawing is fun. I can make a living off of this. Once you get enough blended and you look at it and you think, okay, this is looking okay. You know, still not perfect, but it's okay. It's about in the right place. It's about the right size. It doesn't look like a dog. Could look like a horse. Once you look at it and you think, okay, it's working out. It's going to be okay. Then you're ready for some tighter details. And what I like to do is I switch over my drawing pencils. I will now go to my 6B and pretty much finish the entire drawing with my 6B. So that B is a softness scale. The softer the graphite, the higher the number. And in the H scale, the higher the number, the harder the pencil. So here I go with my 6B pencil. Now I want contrast. I want it to go darker. So there's certain places I want it to go darker. And I get to pick and choose where I want it to go darker at. So again, I'm going to spend a little extra time on the head and usually the eyes. Have you ever looked into the eye of a rhino? That's kind of what it looks like. So there's a little light here. This little bit of light that's up here are his eyelashes. They're catching a little bit of light. Underneath, you can see that pupil. And then there's a little bit of light under here on the eye. And then some of these little wrinkles that go around are kind of... So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start out with the little darkness that goes around his eye. There's a little bit of eyelashes that are here. Just going to put those in real briefly. Let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. There's his eye. There's some of this. Here's his pupil. And then any of those little wrinkles, just zigzag through the wrinkles. Don't draw a line. If you do, they'll look too deep. So I'm just going to zigzag through these little wrinkles. Zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. Here's that shadow that's behind his eyebrow, eyelid, whatever that is. And then all these little wrinkles. And if they're not exactly in the right place, that's okay. Zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. What that zigzag does is it keeps the edges from being too hard. And so as we blend them, those little edges are going to go softer. And they look better that way. You do this on people too. If you're going to draw old people and they've got lots of wrinkles, try to avoid like creviced lines. You just do little zigzags. I'll show you how to do it with your cotton swab too. Because some of those little wrinkles are kind of light. You don't have to do it for all of them, because some of them you can pull out with your kneaded eraser. some of these other little wrinkles that kind of come up off the head there, we're going to do those with our cotton swab. So you can take your cotton swab and you start blending here. Now his eye is fairly dark, so I'm going to start with the middle of the eye. Let me just start blending some of that. Here's some of those little wrinkles. Just going to blend those. And you don't rub it. You know, it's not like I'm trying to rub it. I'm trying to go along those little wrinkles. I'm just kind of blending in the direction that the wrinkles go. Then you can take your kneaded eraser, pinch it down to a little blade, a little point like that. Then you just go in and touch some of those little areas. Touch, touch, touch. And that's how you get your wrinkles. And if your wrinkles are fairly light, you can just go in between those and touch that like this, and then all of a sudden you've got some of those really light little wrinkles. Every now and then you'll have to repinch that. That's how you get those light little wrinkles. And so drawing is kind of a mix of adding a little bit, smearing it, adding a little more, smearing it, adding a little more. How do you get your pencil to go darker? When you think to yourself, I wish it would go a little darker, what do? Yeah, you just press on a little bit. So what you're doing is you're just rubbing the graphite out onto the paper. The more graphite you rub out, the darker your picture, your shape looks. So you get to pick and choose. How much pressure do I put on this? Do I put a lot or a little? Put a little, it goes light. If you put a lot, it goes a little darker. You want to spend a little extra time on the head just because it's the part that people are really going to notice. So you can see that little shadow that comes down his jaw that's right there. I'm just going to kind of pick out some of those little wrinkly areas along that. Put that in there. The more you work on it, the better it's going to look. Here's some more of those little wrinkles that are down in there. Elephants and rhinos, they've got lots of wrinkles. It's because their hide is so thick. Same thing with his nose, with his mouth, anything that is a little darker. The better your scrap is, the better your reference is that you can see, the easier it is to draw from it, because then you don't have to guess what those shapes are, what those shadows are. So anytime you have wrinkles or anything, just go ahead and throw those in. And it's not a big deal if they're not exactly right. The other thing, too, is sometimes you have to anticipate what you're going to blend, knowing that this gray in his nose is quite gray, but I don't have to draw it in because I know I'm going to take that dark that's there and I'm going to blend it in. So you can kind of guess. Don't need all that darkness in there. I'll blend it in. Sometimes it's kind of fun to lose edges too. So like on his nose here, some of these edges get kind of lost. Just leave them out. Oftentimes you have a little dark area on the edge anyway because the object turns away from you. But sometimes it's kind of fun to let the viewer just imagine that something's in there. If you give them too much information, they get bored with it. I'm going to give him a little bit of a point. A little point makes it a little more intimidating, especially when he's chasing you. I'm still using the side of my pencil just because if I use the tip, it would grind it in too much. And I want to be able to blend it. I want to be able to smear things about. And if those wrinkles aren't quite in the right place, that's okay. I'm just going to take those and I'm going to blend them up a little bit. The more graphite you add in there, the better it'll blend, the smoother it'll go. So just keep layering in those little bits of graphite. And that gray that's in his nose, I can take this dark graphite now and I can mix it up, push it up into that. And notice that I don't have to draw lines around things. All of a sudden the edges are starting to come through. And if you see some of these little wrinkles, take your cotton swab and you can make little wrinkles, little soft wrinkles with your cotton swab. Once you've loaded the graphite on there, all those little wrinkles can come through. And if you want them a little stronger, then you just take your kneaded eraser and touch out some of the center parts and voila, you've got wrinkles. Once you've loaded that graphite in there, the rest of it you draw with this cotton swab. And look how fast this goes. I don't know if you've ever drawn a drawing. Well, some of you have never drawn a drawing before, but I used to spend hours and hours and hours just to get the same effect with just pencils. Is your rhino starting to look kind of wrinkly? And okay, it does take a little bit of practice, but now you know how to do it. Now you can practice. Now, if you want it to really go dark, you take your graphite, you layer that in, then you don't blend it. That graphite's going to stay a lot darker if you don't blend it. But you could just like blend the edges or blend part of it. But the last thing you do when you layer in your graphite, you want to keep it that way. Nice and dark. And it's those dark areas that make everything pop, make it really come through. And you can make this as photographic as you want to. But once you finish the head, that's the important part. The rest of it really will take care of itself. So I'm going to, let me zoom out of here. Now, all this other stuff, the head is fairly well done. All this other stuff, nobody's really going to look at that much. And so you want to just hurry through that. It's almost like scribbling. You want to kind of just hurry through it. side of your pencil. There's these little hairs on the top of his ear. That little line where you drop your pencil in and give it a little flick, 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 that's called a feathered line. That works for anything that you want really soft. And up here, his little hump, we're going to let that blend into the background. We might have just a little bit that we do up in there. Like take your cotton swab and just blend a little of that gray. But for the most part, just leave it out. Let that little hump take care of itself. It looks nice and soft. I mean, if a rhino's hump can be soft, but talking about the value of it, the shading a part of it. Even this part of his belly is back over there. Just keep it out. Leave it alone. Don't need a line around it. And now I'm just going to try to scribble in as much as I can. Some of these areas are fairly dark. I'm going to try to get those in fairly quickly. And they can be a little more sketchy because, you know, nobody really cares about those. Once the head's done, they look at the head. The head is done well, then they move on. It's okay. Anybody know any rhino trivia? They're blind? They're big, yeah. And they are extremely powerful. And they can run at like 40 miles an hour. So you're not going to really outrun a rhino. Can they swim? That's a good question. Oh, hippos can run. And hippos can run pretty quick too. That's a good question. So the question I have for you, if you're being chased by a rhino, what's the best thing to do? Yeah, lay down. Lay down. Because they are basically blind and they look at movement. They're like cows. Do you know cows are fairly blind? They look at movement. And so if you cease to move, then you start confusing them because they're colorblind. They have no color. So your grays of your skin, and they look like the ground. Now, they might come over and sniff you and kind of roll you a little bit, but they're not going to gore you. Now watch, as soon as I say that, somebody's going to go to Africa and get gored. Mr. Lowe said I wouldn't get gored. Well,
you're the biologist.
Should have known better. Don't go to Africa and chase rhinos. So I have no idea what I'm looking at back here. I know this is his back leg, but it's just shapes of dark and light. So I'm just going to throw in some of these shapes. I know these are little bushes, there's shadows, stuff back in there, but It's not that big of a deal. Like I say, that one shadow, I don't want to put it in by his nose. So I'm just going to kind of lower it. Here's some weeds. Just do these little feathered lines. We'll blend it and take some things out with the kneaded eraser, and you'll have weeds. And it'll be just fine. So what I want to do now is I want to load as much of this graphite onto my cotton swab so that, number one, I can blend well. And number two, I can do all those weeds in the background and all that stuff because it needs to be soft. You don't want detail in your background unless that's part of your emphasis. But detailing your background will distract from your object, from your foreground. So in order to avoid that, you just soften your background. Keep it nice and gray, keep it fuzzy. All that gray that we layered in to begin with has almost disappeared. I mean, it gets dwarfed by the darker grays that we're laying in now. But it's still there. And it still gives us kind of a nice ground, a nice layer to do this other on, and it makes it smooth. Nothing really on the Rhino is white. Some of it is very light gray. Here's some of these weeds in the background. I'm going to do those with my cotton swab. I'm just going to do these little shapes. Here's a leaf. Here's some weeds, some wheatgrass. And notice that it's not even attached onto anything. Just kind of hanging out there. That keeps that in the distance and keeps it soft. That's just done with your cotton swab. You can do almost the entire background with your cotton swab. And this is very spontaneous. It's not, I don't know if there's, you just kind of decide, how much of that do I want to do? Here's a rock. You can pull some from one place and move it. Then one of the last things you do is as you go back over it, as you smooth things out, I'm going to take your kneaded eraser and just clean it up a little bit. Clean up any edges, any highlights, any light areas. If you want to put in some like little textures or things, you can do that with your kneaded eraser. So I can come in with my kneaded eraser, just throw in a little textures, little dots of light here and there that'll give it the idea that it's wrinkly. You might have to squeeze that thing once or twice, about every 4 strokes, and I have to pinch it down again because it absorbs your graphite. I think sometimes I draw as much with my eraser as I do with my pencil. And that you're using your eraser to get out light. I think that's important as well. And if you want something really dark, just leave that graphite in there. Don't try to blend it or erase it. Got to leave it nice and dark. And it's that darkness like we've got going on in his chin there that makes it pop, makes it come through, makes it stronger. Okay. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. Hopefully this went by quickly for you. If you did, that means that you were having fun. Hopefully you learned something and did something you've never done before. And hopefully as you look at it, you think, hey, I did pretty good. The last thing you want to do is put your signature in there. A good place for a signature is maybe over here in the grass somewhere. I'm going to place mine right there.